Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. Before I get into this episode, please, if you're not a subscriber yet, consider subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, please smash that like button. Destroy your screen. Oops, there's a crack on the screen. Sorry, I didn't mean that. But seriously, if you can smash the like button, that would be greatly appreciated. I've been covering news since the start of the pandemic, and I want you to know that things are changing and things are changing permanently. In fact, here's a headline of an article on your screen from Bloomberg. From the Great Resignation to lying flat, workers are opting out. Folks, this is a global phenomenon, not just in the United States and our country, but also in China, Japan, and Germany. Younger generations are rethinking their pursuit of wealth. So around the world, millions of people are rethinking how they work and live, and they want to better balance the two. In fact, in the United States alone, the Great Resignation has resulted in Americans quitting their jobs in record numbers. More than 24 million people quit their jobs from April to September of 2021, and many are actually staying out of the labor force. In fact, Germany, Japan, and other wealthy nations are seeing the same trend. The fact is, the pandemic has taken a toll on individuals, and people are now feeling more and more burnt out, and there is mental deterioration in addition to the physical stresses associated with COVID. The pressure has been building in developed countries for decades. The fact is, incomes have stagnated. Job security has become much harder to achieve, and housing and education are becoming more and more expensive. And that means that fewer young people are able to lead a financially stable life. In fact, the Great Resignation is a phenomenon among those who are younger than 40. Not only is it impacting younger individuals, it is also being felt across the economy and resulting in a very broad conversation and a realignment of work. Now, millennials, who by the way are individuals born between 1980 and the late 1990s, and Gen Z, the demographic cohort after them, tend to marry, buy houses, and have children later than other individuals, if at all. In China, what's happening, folks, is the lie flat movement, jump-started by a social media post from which it got its name, is also about opting out. It's a reaction against a system in which people work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And by the way, this is very common, not just in places like China, but in some parts of the US as well, specifically in the technology industry. So there's a lot of pressure from family, from society, and even the government to keep climbing the ladder. Now, what's happening in China is that the country's economy has doubled over the past decade, but not everyone is benefiting. In many cities, the rising cost of living is increasing much faster than wage growth. And folks, this is happening in our country, in the United States of America as well. And folks, this is a very interesting phenomenon that is actually emerging in different countries at the same time. In fact, almost half the world's workers are considering quitting, according to a Microsoft survey. About 4 in 10 millennial and Gen Z respondents said that they would leave their job if asked to come back to the office full-time. And this was a global survey conducted by the advisory company Qualtrics International. And some among older generations have criticized these attitudes as privileged and lazy. But the reality is that working hours have been dropping in richer countries for decades across all age brackets. In fact, let's take a look at this chart on your screen that shows you the average working hours per worker over a full year. The black line represents China, which interestingly shows higher number of working hours. The blue line shows Germany, the red line is Japan, and the green line is the United States of America. You can start to see that for these developed countries, Japan, the United States, and Germany, the average working hours per worker are actually reducing. And so what's happening, folks, is as a direct result of the pandemic and to a certain extent climate change, the Great Resignation and the lie flat movement can lead to a deeper discussion about, hey, do we really need to relentlessly pursue more and more money? And that is the big question. In fact, according to Benjamin Granger, who's the head of employee experience advisory services at Qualtrics, when confronted with the prospect of mortality, people definitely behave differently. People are looking at work through a very different lens. The lens is things like, I'm not working for a paycheck. That's not what this is about. I need to be fulfilled. And so, folks, let me know what you think about this, because this is a very important discussion that I think is going to change the American economy in addition to the global economy. In the United States, the financial anxieties of millennials have been occurring long before COVID. In fact, because of the increase in student debt and the gradual recovery from the last Great Recession in 2008-2009, this generation, the younger generation, is likely to be the first in US history to be less wealthy than their parents. In fact, the pandemic appears to have brought these concerns right to the front of everyone's consciousness and everyone's awareness. 2/3 of millennials, yes, you heard that right, 2/3 of millennials who left their jobs in 2021 said that they did so because of mental health reasons, and the proportion of Gen Z that quit their job because of mental health reasons was even higher at 81%. Folks, people are questioning their priorities, and at the end of the day, people now want more flexibility. They want to be able to spend time with family and friends. They want to be able to work from home if they can help it, because everyone's priorities have changed. In fact, the Great Resignation is something that is causing more and more people from age 30 to 45 to quit their jobs at much, much higher rates. Here's an example, a case study featuring Nate Mann, who's a 40-year-old, and some could consider him a slightly older millennial. He spent almost half his life as a bartender in Washington, D.C. In fact, he worked late nights, he dealt with a lot of stress, and he made about $80,000 a year. But when COVID closed the bar at which he was working in March 2020, he decided to do something he had been thinking about for a long time: painting. He said this: "I all of a sudden had all this time, so I just hunkered down and focused on the art." In fact, many of his friends are shifting out of poorly paid or unfulfilling jobs. He said this: "People have felt their power now. They won't be embarrassed to advocate for themselves or tell the people, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not fair or right." In fact, Mann was one of the many, many millions of individuals who was able to use money that he got thanks to unemployment checks and stimulus benefits to reinvent his career. The fact is, the US personal savings rate has skyrocketed during the pandemic because of the unemployment benefits and stimulus checks. So folks, again, this is a global phenomenon. This is also happening in other parts of the world. And now people's priorities and people's approach towards work is actually changing. Here's an image on your screen that demonstrates a share of people under 30 who say that work is very important. You can see the red line represents Japan, and there are less people in Japan now who think work is important. And you can start to see in America, you can start to see that more and more people think that work is important, but they want to work on their own terms. And that is the evolution of the American economy. Many new questions and challenging questions are now emerging. And now I believe that this could be a way for us to grow as individuals, as professionals, and finally achieve some semblance of work-life balance. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. This right here is a little bit of information about me. Check out my introductory video. You'll learn how I was able to overcome the cycle of poverty that you see on your screen right now, and how I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. I want to help you live your American dream. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.